He's curled up on your lap right now, purring, eyes half closed, completely relaxed in the warm afternoon light coming through the window. You can feel the vibration of it against your leg. You can feel his weight, soft and total, the way only a sleeping animal trusts. You've probably had him for years. You know his moods, his favorite spot on the couch, the exact sound he makes when he's hungry versus when he just wants attention. You know him the way you know very few things in your life, completely quietly, without needing to explain it. But the same animal sleeping peacefully on your chest right now has an entire second life you have never once witnessed. A version of him that exists just outside the door, in the hour after you stop watching, in the part of your yard where the light doesn't quite reach. And what that second life costs your backyard, your feeder, and the birds you've grown to love is something almost no cat owner has ever been told. Not because it's hidden. Because nobody thought to say it out loud in a way that didn't feel like an accusation. This isn't an accusation. Stay until the end, because the number researchers calculated for cats exactly like yours will permanently change how you see your own pet, and what you can do about it starting tonight. Welcome back. Today we're not looking at the birds in your yard. For once, we're looking at the animal sitting closest to you. We'll look at what's still biologically alive inside him after thousands of years of domestication, what decades of field data actually show when cameras follow cats into the dark, and what you can quietly, easily change tonight without taking a single thing away from the animal you love. He came to you as a kitten, barely the size of your hand, and learned your voice, your schedule, the sound of the can opener from 2 rooms away. He learned which chair you sit in. He learned that the sound of a blanket unfolding means warmth is coming. He learned you. You assumed reasonably that 10,000 years of domestication had softened whatever predator existed underneath all that affection. That the selection for companionship, for gentleness, for the capacity to sleep 16 hours and still purr on demand, had quietly retired the other thing. The older thing. It didn't. Geneticists comparing domestic cat DNA to their Near Eastern wildcat ancestors, the species from which all house cats descend, found the hunting circuitry is almost entirely unchanged after millennia of living beside humans. The wiring is the same. The reflexes are the same. The neurological response to movement, to the flutter of something small and fast, is identical to what it was 10,000 years ago in the hills of the Fertile Crescent. What changed was the social layer on top of it, not the layer beneath. Affection and the appetite for the hunt live in the exact same brain, triggered by completely different stimuli, and they never compete with each other. They never cancel each other out. They simply take turns, activated by entirely separate cues, running parallel in the same animal without contradiction or conflict. One part of him learned that you are safety, food, warmth, and the specific comfort of being known. Another part never got that memo at all. Another part is still, at the neurological level, exactly what it was before you ever opened that carrier door and let him out into your kitchen for the first time. A landmark study from the Smithsonian Conservation Biology Institute and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service estimated something that stops most people the first time they hear it. Outdoor cats kill somewhere between 1.3 and 4 billion birds every single year in the United States alone. The range is wide because the data is difficult to collect comprehensively. But even the lower bound of that estimate is a number almost impossible to hold in your mind at once. Billions. Not thousands. Not millions. Billions. Every year. In one country. And that number doesn't come primarily from feral colonies surviving in alleys and parking lots. The researchers were explicit about this. A significant portion of those kills, perhaps the majority, comes from owned cats. Fed cats. Cats with names and veterinary records and Instagram accounts. Fed twice a day. Loved without reservation. Microchipped, vaccinated, photographed constantly on soft furniture, and still by instinct, a hunter the moment the door opens and the yard is available. It isn't because he's hungry. That's the part that surprises people most. He'll eat his entire bowl, clean it to the ceramic, and 10 minutes later press himself flat against the deck railing watching the chickadee on your feeder with the same intensity he'd have if he hadn't eaten in 3 days. Hunting in cats was never driven primarily by hunger. It is driven almost entirely by movement. Movement alone. A fluttering wing. A sudden hop from one branch to another. A flicker at the absolute edge of his vision while he's sitting perfectly still in the sun. Each one of those things fires an ancient chase reflex, instantly, automatically, before any part of the brain that knows your name or remembers the sound of your voice has a chance to intervene. The reflex is faster than recognition. The reflex predates everything else about him. Researchers at Cornell Lab of Ornithology, after reviewing decades of population data across North American bird species, now describe free-roaming domestic cats as the single largest human-linked source of bird mortality on the continent. Not a significant source. The largest one. Larger than window collisions, which kill hundreds of millions of birds annually and receive enormous conservation attention. Larger than pesticide exposure. Larger than habitat fragmentation and loss combined, for the songbird species most likely to visit a feeder exactly like yours. A separate study, conducted across multiple sites, fitted outdoor cats with small lightweight video cameras attached to their collars and recorded everything the animals did during their unsupervised hours outside. The researchers followed the footage carefully, logging every behavior. What they found was something that almost no owner ever sees. Each cat made an average of roughly 2 successful unreported kills every single week. 2 per week per cat, that the owner at home had no knowledge of and no reason to suspect. Unreported, because most cats don't carry prey triumphantly back to the door the way people imagine. They eat it quietly in the grass. They cache it under a shrub. They abandon it where it falls and walk back inside as if nothing happened, groom themselves on the rug, and come find you on the couch. And you assume the afternoon was uneventful, because from where you were sitting, it was. Which means the cat who has never once dropped a bird at your feet, the one you've always thought of as not really a hunter, as different from other cats somehow, may still be hunting successfully, consistently, almost every single night he has access to the yard. Gentleness inside the house and predation outside of it were never actually in conflict. They were never even in the same conversation. They happen in different rooms, separated by a door, and the animal moves between them without any apparent awareness of the contrast. But here's the part that almost no one covers when they talk about cats and birds, and it changes everything about which birds in your yard are actually most at risk. Ground-feeding birds, sparrows, juncos, towhees, thrushes foraging in the leaf litter, and especially fledglings still in the process of learning to fly, are caught at dramatically higher rates than adult birds perching at elevated feeders. The birds you watch most, the ones at the feeder at eye level, are actually among the safer ones. The ones you rarely see are the vulnerable ones. A fledgling robin, a fledgling song sparrow, a fledgling house wren, each one spends up to 2 full weeks hopping on or near the ground before its wings are strong enough to carry it reliably into the air. 2 weeks during which flight is uncertain, landings are awkward, and the instinct to freeze rather than escape puts it directly in the path of anything moving low through the grass. Every spring, in backyards exactly like yours, that 2-week window becomes the single most dangerous stretch in a young bird's entire life. Not the nest. Not the migration. The 2 weeks after the nest, when the bird is visible and slow and still figuring out its own body. Researchers in rural Wisconsin once tracked a single outdoor pet cat over an 18-month period using a combination of collar cameras and direct observation. That one cat killed over 300 animals during the study period. Not across a lifetime. Across 18 months. Most of those 300 were birds. Not mice, not voles, not the small mammals people tend to assume make up the bulk of cat predation. Birds, in numbers that genuinely surprised the scientists who designed the study, who had expected to see more balance across prey types. Now multiply that single-owned, well-fed Wisconsin cat by the roughly 60 to 100 million outdoor cats estimated to exist across the United States today. The math stops feeling like an abstraction almost immediately. It becomes something you can feel. The difference between a yard that fills with birds across a decade and a yard that quietly, gradually, inexplicably empties. None of this means your cat is a villain. That framing doesn't help anyone, and it isn't accurate. He isn't deceiving you. He isn't capable of the kind of conflict between affection and appetite that this situation might make you want to assign to him. It means he is exactly, precisely what millions of years of evolution built him to be. Wrapped now in a collar with a little tag that has your phone number on it. Sleeping in a patch of sunlight on your kitchen floor. But still, underneath that, exactly what he always was. Domestic cats retain a hunting instinct so precise, so deeply encoded, that it activates reliably even after generations of being fed entirely by hand and never once needing to hunt to survive. The instinct doesn't require practice. It doesn't require hunger. It doesn't require any environmental pressure at all. It simply activates when the conditions are present, the same way it always has. The same purr that fills the room when he's comfortable on your lap was, in its evolutionary origin, not a signal developed for human comfort at all. It developed as a self-soothing mechanism, a low-frequency vibration that may have served social bonding within wildcat family groups. It was co-opted over thousands of years of proximity to humans, into something that now reads to us as contentment directed at us specifically. But the mechanism predates the relationship. He isn't pretending to love you while secretly resenting the birds outside. That's not the architecture. Both instincts are entirely real, running side by side, undivided. The warmth he feels toward you is genuine. The reflex that fires when a bird moves low across the yard is equally genuine. They simply don't know about each other. Which means the real solution was never about changing who he fundamentally is. You can't train 10,000 years out of a nervous system, and there's no reason to try. It's about managing, carefully and consistently, what he gets exposed to and when. Which is something completely within your control, starting tonight. A single bell attached to a cat's collar reduces successful bird kills by roughly half, according to multiple independent field studies conducted across different countries and climates. Half. One small addition to what he's already wearing. Brightly colored collar covers, the kind birds can actually detect and process in daylight, because birds see color ranges that cats do not, cut kills even further. In some studies, dramatically further. One British study using a rainbow-patterned collar cover, specifically designed with a visual spectrum of birds in mind, recorded up to an 87% reduction in birds caught over the course of the trial period. 87%, from one piece of fabric around a neck. Keeping him inside specifically during dawn and the hour after sunrise, and again during the hour before dusk and at dusk itself, removes him from the yard during the windows when birds are most active, most visible, and most vulnerable to predation. It doesn't require keeping him inside all day. Just those windows. These changes don't diminish his life in any meaningful way. Indoor and catio-confined cats live, on average, 2 to 3 years longer than cats with regular outdoor access. They suffer fewer injuries from fights with other animals. They have substantially lower exposure to feline diseases transmitted through contact with strays and wildlife. They are almost never hit by cars. A well-designed catio, a screened outdoor enclosure that gives him fresh air, sunlight, and direct contact with birdsong and wind and the smell of the yard, satisfies his environmental needs completely, without ever giving him direct access to the animals living in that environment. Window perches work similarly indoors. He gets to watch. He gets the visual stimulation of birds moving in the yard, the tail flicking, the focused stare, the entire behavioral performance of the predator in observation mode. He just never gets the chase. And the birds outside the glass never know he's there. Interactive play, 10 or 15 focused minutes with a wand toy, something that moves unpredictably and requires him to stalk and pounce, satisfies the same neurological circuit that chasing a bird would activate. It requires the same reflexes, the same muscles, the same instinct. It just ends differently. Researchers studying feline enrichment found that cats given regular structured play sessions hunted measurably less during outdoor access time compared to cats without that outlet. The circuit needed exercise. The play gave it exercise. The birds, in the yard those cats accessed afterward, were safer for it. This was never really a story about choosing between the cat on your couch and the birds at your feeder. It was never a story about guilt. It was never a story about someone being at fault. It's a story about understanding that the gentlest, warmest, sleepiest animal in your entire house still carries something ancient inside it. Something fully intact. Something that activates the moment the conditions are right, without asking permission, without any signal you would recognize from the inside of your home. A coyote howling from a field far away feels like nature. A hawk circling high overhead feels like nature. The predator asleep on the cushion beside you almost never does. But the birds in your yard don't make that distinction. They only know the outcome. You are not wrong, not even slightly, to love him without reservation every single day since he first came home. The love is real. The bond is real. Nothing in any of this changes what exists between you. You just never had the information that would allow you to love him responsibly at the same time, in a way that accounts for what he is completely, not just the half of him that learned your name. Now you have it. Now you know exactly what's sleeping on your lap. Both halves of him completely. The one that trusts you with his entire body weight and his closed eyes and his slow breathing. And the one that still hunts, that was always going to hunt, that was built to hunt before you were ever part of the equation. Knowing that doesn't make the purring any less real. It doesn't make the weight of him any less comfortable. It just means you finally understand the whole animal. Not the version you assumed. The actual one. And the actual one is, if anything, more remarkable for containing both of those things at once. Tell me in the comments, does your cat go outside, and have you ever found something quietly left behind on the porch that you didn't quite know what to make of at the time? I read every single one. Even the long ones. Especially the ones where you weren't sure what you found until right now. Until next time, to the bird outside your window, and the one sleeping warm on your lap.